And we are live. Hey guys, welcome to the Dirty Christian Show. I am Drew, and I am the Dirty Christian. And joining me now is a super special guest. Just flattered and honored to have this wonderful woman here. She is Dr. Jo Jorgensen, and she is running for President of the United States for the Libertarian Party. Jo, please take a couple minutes and just say hello, say hi to people, whatever you want. Just, this is easy. Go ahead.
Well, hello, and thank you for calling me super special. I think that's the first time I've been called that. So I'm a senior lecturer at Clemson University. I went to Baylor University for my undergrad, SMU for my MBA, and then got my doctorate at Clemson. I've been pretty much a lifelong libertarian ever since I discovered the party in 1979 when I was still in school. And I was just so excited to hear that there were other people who agreed with me. And let me just mention, especially because, for your audience, special for your audience, I discovered the party in 1979, and I just gone to the largest Southern Baptist university in the world. And even in 1979, I somehow got through both high school and college, never having tried marijuana. And I hear about the Libertarian Party, and there's just been some misunderstandings about the party. That one of the descriptions I heard was angry white men who don't like to pay taxes and like to smoke pot. So I'd like to mention that, yes, our party did come from the right, but you can be a perfect conservative in the party as well, because when I look at issues, I look at how does it affect people. Now, the good thing is liberty works and liberty is right. So it's a morally good system, and practically it's got the best solutions, regardless of what solution it is or what problem it is.
Absolutely. So you brought up an interesting question for me. So where were you before 1979? What was your mainstream leaning? I mean, I would assume conservative because you were going to a Baptist university, but tell me about where you were before that.
Well, first of all, I grew up north of Chicago, in a very small town with only one red light. So I just didn't really have any political aspirations. In fact, a lot of people ask me, so I guess, you got interested in politics, how? Poli-sci, did you run for student government? I actually was really annoyed that we even had student council and a student body president, because my thought was, why should an elite few make rules, make decisions for the rest of us? So I think reading Animal Farm in grade school had a big impact on me. And when I got to high school, I thought, well, this isn't fair. And it's really kind of funny, because the first issue that got my attention was drug use. Basically the freedom to use the drug of your choice. And when I was in high school, the valedictorian gave a speech, her graduating speech, that really, because it was a small town, it really created just a firestorm. I remember even my parents talking about it, and they didn't even go to the graduation because nobody in my family was graduating. But it was just a small town thing that everybody's outraged, especially because her father was like superintendent of the school district or something like that. He really high muckety muck up in the education system. But what she said was something like, it's pretty, isn't it hypocritical that somebody can sit there with a martini and say it's not fair to other people that they can't smoke marijuana? And I thought, that actually makes sense. My drug of choice is bourbon, by the way, always has been. But, if other people want to use something else, who am I to say no?
Sure. Well, that's, and that's interesting. We'll definitely talk about the idea of the decriminalization of drugs, which I think that there are a lot of Christian people have questions about that. Yeah. That seems like that would be a good, but what I want to start off on first is we kind of discussed, and I said, a lot of my voters a lot of my listeners would consider themselves to be single issue voters on a lot of things, especially on the platform of abortion. And we know the Libertarian Party is very, they stand very firmly on the idea that crime is not a crime unless it is against if there's no victim, there is no crime. Exactly. And I watched a very recent debate actually with Dr. Block, I believe is his name.
Okay. Yeah, Walter maybe? Walter?
Yeah, Walter Block, yeah. And it was a fantastic debate, which was really primarily pro-choice with the idea that what I love to hear is that the fetus is considered a life and the fetus is considered to have rights. And so at what point, from a legal standpoint, do we say, it can go or it can stay or it must stay? And I know that there's a lot of sides. So I think to my audience, I want to say first, there are varying views within the Libertarian Party on abortion, which is fair. So how do you tell my audience when abortion is a very important topic, why they should vote Libertarian? What is the end result? And I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to point out I did receive flack because we were asked if there was one part of the platform, what would we change? And I said to eliminate that particular plank, because there is an argument that can be made that if life does start at conception and people have the right to life, liberty, and property, then that's when it needs to be protected. I'd also like to point out that Dr. Ron Paul, who was a Republican congressman and our 1988 presidential candidate, he was very pro-life. In fact, he was a gynecologist, an OB-GYN, delivered many, many, many babies, and he was very pro-life, and he became a libertarian and, basically said, well, we'll let the states decide. But I would like to point out that the Libertarian Party is the only party out there who will never spend a dime on abortions. And you can't say that about Republicans. So if you look in the Republican platform, which I've never actually read the Republican platform, it's been many years. I assume it says pro-life in there. But despite that, we have Republican politicians who are voting either directly or indirectly that abortions be paid for. And my question, why didn't John McCain vote to get rid of Obamacare, especially after, my heart goes out to those nuns who were required to offer a health care plan that offered abortion. That's horrible. And no libertarian would ever spend $1 that somebody did not want to spend for abortion.
Well, that's a very fantastic and convincing argument too, and I really I love the idea. So the idea, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think people may have misquoted you or have thought this about your platform, but the idea that Planned Parenthood itself is federally funded, that would not exist in the libertarian in a libertarian run country, correct? Correct. So then the idea is to delegate it down to the states and allow the states to decide, and the people in the states to decide that law, correct? I mean, so it could be Texas is okay, but Ohio is not.
Well, that was Ron Paul's stance. Gotcha. Now, my platform is I am running on the Libertarian Party ticket, or on the Libertarian Party platform, which does say that the government should stay out of it. And I'd like to quote my running mate, Harry Brown, who said, and he was personally against abortion, but he said, you get the government involved and pretty soon men will be having abortions. Basically his thing was government doesn't work. You don't want government involved. Right. So the platform is government needs to stay out at all levels. And that is my platform. What I'm saying, though, is unlike Republicans, nobody would ever get a dollar from me for abortions that they don't want to pay for. And I'd like to mention that this is probably one of the more contested issues in the party.
Yeah, and again, I would recommend to anybody listening, just please go watch some of the awesome libertarian debates about it, because really, I felt like even though I felt like I automatically had a side going in being very pro-life, I really felt hearing Dr. Block's information kind of changed a little bit of my at least an opinion on what can we do today, right now, as opposed to what are we letting the government do later, or down the road, or having control of. So, all right. I have a fun question for you, Dr. Jorgensen. And can I call you Joe? I just want to be polite here.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Joe, I have a fun question. What is the last book?
Yeah, how about Dr. Joe? You can elevate me to Dr. Phil status.
I would love that. Dr. Phil gets his own show. You may as well get your own title, Dr. Joe. That works. What was the last book that you read, and how did you choose it?
I read The Inclusive Economy by Michael Tanner, who's worked at Cato for decades. I met him in the early 90s, and he's just awesome. He is a wealth of knowledge. And it's about, basically how, even if you look at something like charity, racism, how do you help the poor, how the government has done more harm than good, because that's what they usually do.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would agree. I think most people, not even libertarians, would agree that the government does more harm than good. Okay, cool. Let's talk about the war on drugs, particularly because I think it's pretty apparent that the war on drugs. I think the Libertarian Party agrees as a whole that it's bad. It's not a good thing. It created far more problems racially, politically, monetarily, everything else. However, with that in mind, going towards the decriminalization of drugs, how does that work? Because to someone like me, or to someone like maybe some of the other people out there, they're going to say, well, if it's illegal, then everybody's going to do it, and everybody's going to be crazy, and everybody's going to be murdering, or like bath salts, eating faces of people in Florida. So how do you talk to that, please?
Okay, so, and I appreciate your format that we can spend a little more time on each issue. So if you go back to alcohol prohibition, what did we have? We had organized crime that had a lot of money put into it. We had people who wanted to drink peacefully, but they had to deal with criminals, and it didn't help the problem. In fact, we had, the beginning of drive-by shootings and all of that with Al Capone. So what happened when they ended alcohol prohibition? Drinking went up slightly, but social problems did not go up, and alcoholism did not go up. So the problem was with the prohibition, not the alcohol use itself. I mean, yes, of course, there are problems with alcohol use, and I'd like to point out that alcohol is much more deadly than marijuana. But still, there are more problems caused with alcohol. And so anybody who says, well, everybody's just going to go wild in the street and they're going to be strung out on drugs all the time, my question to them is, are you strung out on alcohol now? Right. Are you drinking gin from morning till night? Now, yes, some people do, but as I said, alcohol addiction did not go up after prohibition. If somebody is an addict, unless they get treatment, they are going to find a way to get their drugs, even if they have to sell their body or anything. And in fact, if we got rid of the laws, then people could easier seek treatment. So let's look at alcohol prohibition now. Put it in today's terms. Have you ever heard of a liquor store owner going to a school playground or going to the high school hallways trying to sell gin? Or have you ever heard of somebody breaking into homes because they had to support their vodka habit? Have you ever heard of two liquor stores having a shootout because one of them took their best corner? No, sure. All of these are problems with the prohibition, not the drugs. And so we've got innocent 5-year-old children being killed in crossfire, children who have never used drugs, but they're in the crossfire of the drug gangs. And what I want to do is I want to end the drug war and have a drug peace. And by doing that, what's so crazy about having Philip Morris, in addition to selling cigarettes, selling marijuana? Who would you rather sell marijuana cigarettes? The gangs who are getting money into organized crimes and into other crimes, or a tax-paying, I hate to say, but a tax-paying company who is not going to lace it with products? And you don't see Philip Morris out there trying to, sell cigarettes in the hallways of school in schoolyards, but that's what you see with drugs, because that being illegal just puts so much profit in there. And let me make one other quick point, which is Milton Friedman, one of my favorite economists, said that crack cocaine would never have been invented had cocaine not been illegal, because it didn't make any economic sense. The only way it made sense was to have cocaine be illegal. If cocaine had been legal, nobody would have messed with it because it would have been too expensive.
Well, that is very interesting. So now regarding those that do have addictions, that do need help, and let's say drugs are legal, but this person commits a crime against someone else while on a substance. So what kind of programs would you have in place for rehabilitations and keeping awareness of the dangers of drugs, so on and so forth?
Well, I think that the private industry can do a much better job than the government. So would I start any programs? No. But just as we have DUI, stringent DUI laws for alcohol, we need the same thing for drugs. And by the way, personally, I think some of the DUI laws need to be strengthened, but that's not up to the president. So I'm not speaking about those, but that's just a personal issue. So absolutely, you can't commit crimes. You can't drive while intoxicated or anything. But by getting the money out of the criminals, we've got safer streets. We don't have the shootouts. Schools will be safer. And we have room in our jails for murderers, rapists, and other violent criminals who should be in jail. It's really distressing to hear about peaceful drug users going into the jail and having rapists being let out early because there's not enough use. And my question is, if somebody were caught drinking gin or vodka, would you say, okay, let's take this rapist, let's let this rapist out of jail so we can put this gin drinker in jail? It makes no sense.
Sure. Well, that's fair. Joe, I'm going to hit you with a hard one, or Dr. Joe, I should say.
That wasn't the hard one?
No, I want to hit you with one. What about, what would you have changed different with the COVID-19 response?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you for that. So first, let me say that this is the largest assault on our liberty that I've seen in my lifetime.
Amen.
Putting us all under house arrest was horrible. And I am so glad to see the American spirit, to see these people protesting and telling them, look, we should be able to decide to go to work, go to church. I mean, my heart goes out to all these people who want to go to their place of worship, and the government saying no. The government, that's not the government's role. And what's ironic here is one of my grandfathers immigrated from Sweden, and his family came over here because they were looking for freedom, the opportunity, land of the free, home of the brave. And yet during the coronavirus, people in Sweden got to walk around, go to school, go to shopping malls, go to restaurants, and we're all under house arrest. So it's ironic that my family came here for freedom and they found less freedom. So what to do differently to answer that question? Donald Trump should have done two things, and this is what I would have done as president. First of all, a lot of people don't realize that the FDA before 1962, and I was already alive then, so it's not that long ago. But before 1962, you only had to prove a drug was safe, and that's it. After 1962, now you have to prove that a drug works, that it's that there's efficacy. And that sounds like a nice goal, but the problem with that is it takes anywhere from $1 million up to $1 billion per drug, as well as a lot of time to prove, according to their standards, that it works. So what we had a lot of companies in America, over 60 of them, making testing kits for the coronavirus. Yet the FDA early on only approved 2 of them. So that meant we had all these testing kits that Americans couldn't use because the FDA put a roadblock. And the sad thing is, good for other countries, sad for us, but those testing kits went all around the world. And we saw all these reports out of Southeast Asia, how they were testing all of their citizens. So they knew which people to should stay home, which people could go outside. So what I would have done as president is I would have eliminated, Emergency Powers Act, eliminate the efficacy requirement, and just have test makers prove that their test kits are safe, and that's all, and let us use it. And the second problem that he had was in a press conference. Well, he said this repeatedly, I believe, but I actually saw him at a press conference on TV say, no need to get tested unless you have symptoms. While there are people on the stage with him who are saying that about 60 to 80% of the people have no or very mild symptoms. So to me, the message should be everybody should get tested, because you may not have any symptoms and you may be out there infecting all these people. So if we had gotten testing kits, then people would have known to stay home if they were sick, even though they didn't know they were sick. And then the people who were sick got over it, could go out and rejoin the economy. And I'd like to point out, because a lot of people say, well, but what about pandemic? Let the people decide. We don't need the government as our mommy or our daddy. And there was a poll that said that the majority of Americans, when they were talking about opening up business, they asked Americans, do you think it's too soon, or should we have done it before? And the majority of Americans said it's too soon. We need to be quarantined a little longer. So it flies in the face of the run amok, argument. Well, won't people just disregard the pandemic and just run around and infect everybody? No, people were saying on their own they wanted to stay home. So they're adults.
That's true. And I actually found that even with my own family, we had several family members that, as the restrictions here released in Kansas City area, that they decided to stay home, and that was fine. And nobody questioned it. Nobody cared. It was totally their choice. I mean, people have been making risk decisions their entire lives from birth.
Exactly.
And so that's fun.
And can I point out?
Please.
There's a risk reward, because don't forget, it's not like we all get to stay home and money comes out of the sky. So we lost tens of millions of jobs. Many of these jobs will never come back. So basically the government is making a decision that, okay, you need to stay home. And what's frustrating is many of those people making that decision, they were still getting paid their paycheck. We kept saying,
right.
Cuomo on TV saying, stay home, stay home. What's easy for you to say? You still get your paycheck. The rest of, and I also saw an epidemiologist on the news, my local news, and she was saying, you need to stay home a couple more months. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you got a PhD in epidemiology. I'm sure you're still getting paid. What about the people who have to wait tables and stand behind the cash registers? They are not getting paid.
Absolutely. Somebody's asking about Second Amendment. You've been very, very vocal and clear. I think that you have a very simple answer for them. They're watching you right now. You can tell them.
Second Amendment. Second Amendment.
She's very pro Second Amendment. She believes that you should have your guns and protect yourselves and your family. So,
so a slightly longer version. I am a gun owner. I own a couple of guns. And I would get rid of every law that's been passed on guns in the last 100 years. And the red flag law is just outrageous, that people can have their guns taken away from them without even a trial. It's outrageous.
So would you say that, would you have zero restrictions at all for gun ownership, or would you have some? Would you have maybe one or two, or completely anybody can own a gun?
I can't think of any restriction, because the problem is, you're going to say, okay, you can't have a gun in this area or in this state. Are the criminals going to go, oh, okay, well, never mind then. We won't own guns. No, the criminals are going to get guns anyway. Look at how it is with the drug war. Mm. We said heroin's illegal. Does that mean everybody stops using heroin? No. So really, there's. Now, of course, if somebody commits a crime, they need to be punished to the fullest extent. So I'm fine with that, and that should be done. And keep in mind, my degree's in psychology. If somebody does something wrong like that, they should be punished. But usually laws end up hurting those who need it, and it doesn't hurt criminals. And there have been documented cases where a woman was being stalked, or she received death threats from her ex or whatever, had a restraining order, and there's a waiting day period. And in the meantime, she gets killed. And if she was able to get a gun as a criminal can, she would be alive. And if we look at all these laws, who are we protecting? And me as a woman, there have been times when I've been an adult single woman living alone, and I couldn't overpower a 200-pound guy breaking into my house. So what do they say? That's the great American equalizer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, that's awesome. I know we don't have too much. We've gone about 25 minutes, so let me get one really good question out of you and it'll give you a little bit of time to talk on. But I have a lot of friends that are vets. Myself, I'm actually a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. I did 20 and a half years in the Navy, and I'm disabled now, and I basically get a disability check from the VA. So that is very important to me as a disabled vet. So I would like to hear your opinion on the VA and obviously bringing the troops home. We know that is a huge part of your platform. So you don't have to go too far into that, but what about vets that are here that have served?
Well, first of all, yes, thank you for your service. And also my dad was in the Navy as well, although he didn't serve as long as you did. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah.
We keep hearing Elizabeth Warren and all these other politicians saying we need one giant Medicaid, right? Or Medicaid for all, right? When I hear Medicaid for all, what I hear is VA hospital for all. We already have experience with the monopoly system, and that's the VA hospital. And just like all monopolies, they do a poor job. And it's very frustrating because what I'm hearing, and just to spread to medical care in a larger sense, is what I hear is people saying, well, the free market doesn't work, so I guess we're going to have to go to single payer. But the problem is the free market doesn't, or rather, the free market does work. The problem is we do not have a free market system. We have not had a free market system since World War II. And if you look at the only two somewhat free markets specialties, that would be cosmetic surgery and LASIK surgery, because those are the two fields in which insurance doesn't pay, where you have to spend your own money. And what we see doctors competing. We see doctors having to offer lower prices and better quality, and that's what's been going on. If you look at the prices of those, they've been going down while quality's been going up. Because just like buying a car, buying a computer, buying groceries, you've got people competing for your business. And that's the way it should be for our vets, rather than putting them in a monopoly system. And this is something that doesn't make sense to me anyway, is the average person does not like a monopoly. We've grown up learning that a monopoly is a bad thing because we don't get good service. Because if we get bad service, we can't say, well, I'll take my business elsewhere. And yet that's what they expect us to do with healthcare. It didn't work for the VA hospital, and it wouldn't work for our country.
Well, that is very fair and probably one of the best answers that I've heard. Dr. Jorgensen, thank you so much. It has been a blessing and a pleasure. And we will have Spike on the 22nd of June. So all of the other questions that people are asking, we will get more. We'll have him for like an hour. So we'll divert all the rest of the questions to him, Dr. Jorgensen. But hey, best of luck to you.
Do you mind if I take one more minute?
Please take all the time that you want. I don't want to keep you, but you can take all of the time you want, please.
Yeah, no, and I'm under strict, I'm doing like 9-10 interviews a day. So they do want me to keep it down. But because your audience is a little right leaning, I do want to mention that I wish I had a podcast, because then I could have told everybody I told you so. I was one of the few people who was predicting that Donald Trump would win. Because I understand statistics. And I knew that those polling companies were only looking at people who had voted recently. They didn't take into account all of the people who were just so disgusted with politics that, they either had never voted or they hadn't voted in like 20 years. And all of those people went to Donald Trump because he was an outsider and he promised to reduce the deficit. Instead, we find that he's acting more like a Republican than an outsider. The deficit keeps going up. more and more and more under him. So to all of the people who were looking for a true outsider, somebody who understands economics, who will make government smaller, please look to me. And my website is joj2020.com. It's joj2020.com. We're getting a lot of non-libertarian volunteers, and we would just love to hear from your viewers.
Well, and thank you again, Dr. Jorgensen. Really take care. We will be in touch, and hopefully we'll see some great news come November. But let's get you to the debates first, okay?
Yep. Thanks so
much.
Have a great
take care of yourself. All right. Bye-bye. We'll see you.
It's been great. Thanks.
All right, guys, that was Dr. Jo Jorgensen. She is the Libertarian Party presidential nominee. And we are excited. I'm excited that she came on and joined us for the show. Really, just let me just tell you guys, since I retired from the Navy, a lot has changed for me, and I've had a lot of options and opportunities to speak about political things. This is an opportunity right now for our country, for our people, to be able to make it known that we're tired of the normal system of politics. We are tired of it always being Democrat or Republican. And this is coming from a guy, I have always been very right-leaning. I have always been very conservative. And I was a MAGA guy not too long ago, right? I was a MAGA guy because I didn't realize, I forgot that I had a choice, man. I forgot that I had third party, and third party choice to me is very important, because at the end of the day, you vote for who you want to vote for. And by all means, research your candidates. I respect that. I would never tell you to vote for the same person that I'm voting for. You make your own decision. If you are legal age to vote, then vote. Make your decision and make it smart. I want to give an opportunity for a third party. And that's why when somebody asked me about my show and why I had been, that I've been talking about political stuff so much lately, is because I really truly believe in the third party. And I really truly believe that we are at a point in our country now where we as Americans have to say something, and we have to have a voice. And it's the same way I feel about Christianity. It's the same way I feel about when I see a church doing something, or when I hear a story of a pastor saying something or doing something, and I feel like enough is enough. I have to stand up. I have to say something, because this can't go on. And I feel like I was very, very red before. I've never really been blue. I don't think. Maybe in my youth I would have been, but I've always been very conservative. And it's nice to find a party that I can still be conservative, but yet they still have the best interest of the people in this country, and the liberty of what this country stands for. With the Constitution and the inalienable rights that we have under the Constitution. I think that Christians should have a voice with politics. I think that Christians, I think we should have an opinion. I think it matters because at the end of the day, God is in control, and that's all awesome. But we can still say something. We can still have a voice and opinion. And I really like what Joe said about abortion and the states ending the control. And here's a better argument that I would say, and I know that Dr. Jorgensen did not say this, but if you watch that debate that I watched, the idea of the viability of the fetus, right? Now, like, if you were to just take this from a completely legal, I'm not talking I believe that life starts at conception 100%, and that any type of killing a child in the womb, fetus, whatever, is murder. I believe that 100%. There is no question in my mind that is murder. Hello, Jason Buckley, Navy vet running for U.S. Senate from Kansas. Well, I'm in Missouri, brother. Good luck to you, and let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you out as well. Anyway, completely lost track because I'm reading comments. That's what happens when I do this. I lose track. If somebody can catch me up and tell me what I was talking about, that would be great. I don't have a guy like over here in the corner being like, you were talking about abortion. Or, I mean, I think I was, but I don't really remember what else I was saying. Either way, guys, I will have Spike Cohen here on the show on the 22nd of June, so please tune into that. If you guys have more questions, I have questions for Joe. Obviously, I knew that I had a very small amount of time with her. I think we covered some of the ones that I felt like were the most pressing, but I also have ingredients for a casserole, if anybody would like an ingredients for a casserole. But with Spike coming on, and Spike is her vice presidential running mate, he would be another one that would have the shared information, so we could ask that. Viability of the fetus. Thank you, guys. Yes, so just speaking, just clearly from a legal perspective, not from a Christian perspective, because I very specifically, it's okay, Mr. Buckley, you're good. Just because, I have to make clear, I definitely believe in life at conception. But if we were to talk about from a legal aspect, and we were talking about the viability, if we were to make a law that the viability of the fetus would be the ability to abort would be based on the viability of the fetus, based on science, only science, and this is just the argument that I heard and what caused me to just think about things. I haven't changed my opinion. I haven't changed my mind at all. I want you to just consider this. But that the idea that technology, as it catches up, and we are in a place in society where technology, 10 years from now is probably going to tell us that the viability of the fetus is at 2 weeks, and then 10 years from there, 5 years from there, the viability is at conception. Like we know what the truth is, and we know that science and truth can coexist. So I think it's possible to believe that at some point in time that science does actually say that the life starts at conception, because we can see it. We see that the fetus is viable at conception because of technology and keeping the babies alive. Anyway, long story short, I'm totally rambling, getting off on a weird tangent here. I'm not trying to do that, but the idea was that at least if we were to make that a law, the viability of the fetus being the key of that we made that a law that would prevent about a third of abortions that are happening right now across the world. Not a complete fix to anything by any means, but what I like about what Joe said specifically is that we as the government, or they as the government, should have no say in it. They should have no money going towards Planned Parenthood or any other organization. They should have no say. Let the states have that say, and then let the people have their way in those states. And I think that is ultimately what it is. So that is, oh, thanks, brother. You see my Hebrew nuts, my nut tats. Appreciate that, man. Well, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I don't want to keep it going for too much longer. We're at 39 minutes, but Dr. Jorgensen was a treat. It was a fantastic show. I'd love to get some more people on here, but we'll see you when I'm talking to Spike, and then whatever else we got going on in the rest of the world, guys. I love you. God bless you. Take some time. Think about everything that we talked about tonight. Love you guys. God bless. I'm Drew. I'm the Dirty Christian, and I'm out.